on what we were discussing last time. So I'm going to now, what's happening here? Let's just get rid of this. And come on. Yeah. Data analytics, so data analysis. Obviously, you can pretty much figure out from the word analyst or analytics. And you must have heard how people have chosen for their profession, subjects of data sciences. And they specialized in product analysis. Some people are financial analysts. Others are, it's all different kinds of analysts. But analysis usually is the interpretation or calculation of relationships and mm, their effects on each other, as something which eventually would give us a results from that helps us to derive inferences and come up with some conclusions. So analysis of different sorts are there, but when we say data analysis, data could be anything, could be any type of data, any form of data. So generally, data analysis is used as generic term, but when you are doing your research work, you are asked to perform analytics of some sorts for the type of data being qualitative or quantitative data. And when you are coming up with methods of doing analytics, there are few that we can discuss in the class, and there could be so many more. But the bottom line is that today we like to look at something we call data visualization, or some sort of illustrated facts that is easy to understand, but just looking at them from the design perspective. Design meaning it could be a graph, a chart, dispersion charts, cause and effect charts, and so on. So that all of it is actually not entirely discussed in our topics of CIRS, but the concept or the conceptual value is most important, which would give you the basis from where you can actually start to find more, or if you're interested, you can get deeper into it. So from an analytics point of view, we will look at some sort of research methodologies that drive the analytics for general use or overall objectives of what analytics is about, can be absorbed, so let's look at those concepts. There is two there, and like I said, there is qualitative and there is quantitative. So in the qualitative data analytics, there is theories. There are two kinds of theory. There is analytic induction theory and grounded theory. Theories are important to assume facts, to create test environments, and also to be able to drive inferences eventually based on your approach that you have adopted according to the methodologies, or the theories. So analytic induction, I'm going to open up the book to give you sense of what the definition looks like, because we don't have it in the slide. So let me just open it and take you to a page. So analytic induction is on page 347. What this theory says is that there could be situations where you would want to analyze a situation first, look at what is surrounding that situation, and create a systematic approach to how you're going to discover your informational needs for qualitative data. Qualitative could be observations, could be interviews, could be focus group, but as long as it is something which you have designed for getting information or getting some sort of um, or doing some sort of collection methods that requires personal judgment, requires judgment of qualitative nature. That could be sentiments, could be reactions. One of those could be forming an impression. You know, so depending on if the nature of the research is such that you would adopt theoretically adopt the induction approach, this is where you're going to get the results where some observation is collected through your personal judgments or your personal um, um, way of interpreting a situation. So that is analytic induction. And then there is another one that we call grounded theory. Grounded theory means that it is kind of a open-ended scenario where you would like to start with a main question or a main idea about a, uh, about a situation. It could be a social setting of some sort, anything for which you would have to um, start with an idea, and then you can build on top of it. So you start with a basic question, a broad idea, and then you build on top of it or around it as the situation changes or as you look at how the social setting is evolving. So it is kind of a long-term approach, and it is not one event as in analytic induction, where you can gather that information from that within a particular or a short period of time. Grounded theory just develops or makes you do something we call exploratory search, which is starts in a generic way and then it grows from there on. So that is grounded theory. How you collect the information of qualitative type is through one method that they call coding. Now these are accepted methods in traditional research. So to say that the word coding has a meaning for professional researchers would make sense. For you or for anybody else, coding can be a word that could relate to coding as in programming languages. But in the research sense of collecting information, coding is a technique where you use something similar to how we create tags or categories of information, or we have certain specific words that define or that is now considered codes for distinguishing or characterizing or labeling certain type of information. So what you do is when you are writing the details, you are going to organize them in under the coding of some sort. Memoing is freehand writing about something that are more like comments, observations of expressions or impressions that you get. So that is when you maintain a diary of some sort that becomes a memoing situation. And as you could see that it is saying, memoing is a process of recording the thoughts and ideas of the researcher as they evolve throughout the study. So basically, it is being a collection of information. These are pretty much like notes and comments. Integrative diagrams and sessions. Integrative diagrams, there is a method to it. There's different sorts of diagrams for different situations. You can have cause and effects diagrams, you can have UML diagrams, you can have organizational diagrams, you have brainstorming diagrams, and so on. So those are integrative diagrams. Um, when it comes to quantitative data, we use statistical methods, or let's say we are just going to discuss one of the methods called statistical methods in quantitative analysis. And quantitative also means that they are mathematically inclined. So um, you have to have some sort of sense of understanding the fundamentals of a statistics. Most of it is coming from your school days when from your high school, you must have learned about mean, mode, median if you read or studied statistics there as a subject. So what statistical methods would do is just play with the quantitative aspect or numerical data and put some sense into how you organize those numbers. So one of the things that we talk about in statistics is what we call measure of central tendency. Central tendency means anything that deviates from standard. Like this is more like a bivariate data. Bivariate means that there has to be more than one number to compare with. And more than one is what really works with mean, mode, and median. So let's suppose we're talking about mean. So what mean is one method of describing from the set of numbers what is the middle one or what is the center um, data. A mean can also be an average. Um, Average is very easy to calculate. You just add all the numbers that are there in that set or group, and then you divide it with the number of those numbers. So if there are 6 numbers here, 6, 4, 5, 4, 8, 3, together there's 6 number divided by 6, you just come up with the average. So this is mean or the mean number. Median is when you have randomized numbers that have no sequence or something which is in an unstructured format. We have to put it in a better way to make it visible as if they've got some sort of order. For instance, if these were the numbers, all random numbers and randomly placed in this row, we would first place them from the least number to the most or the highest number of 92 here, and then just pick up the middle number that follows after certain number of these numerics on the left of it and on the right of it. So 56 apparently seems to be the middle one. There's an error here. It should be another number, some other number. So anyway, whatever is in the median is what we look for as the middle number between the set of numbers that are organized in some sequence. Mode is where the the frequency with which certain numbers occur, and if that frequency is high at a certain um, you know at a certain delta. Now let's not get into the mathematical part. Let's look at the visuals. If you see this chart, there are 3 different ones here. There is a chart that is following from left to right, and then we have got one here that is skewing from right to left, whereas on the axis of x and y could be numbers, assuming that mean is hitting from x and y, where x has a number on the vertical scale and y has a number on the vertical side, and the horizontal is the other number, and they both cross as mean over here somewhere. That's where you're going to cross out or put a point. And from this point, you could see that there is another one, which is a median that could be combination of, or where the X and Y combine together or cross each other. This is the median, and mode is the highest, or the one that is more popular or more frequent, for instance, uh, in a pool of numbers. So that is the mode. So there could be different X and Y cross points that could make the chart, or make the let's just I don't know if you know, this is parabola, or something we call, something that is going to show from the visual side, it is going to show that there is a difference in all three numbers. And that's why you can see the chart which is moving from left to right, or from right to left. Lower mean means that if the y is got less numbers, it is going to skew towards the right. If the y has more numbers, it's going to skew to the other side. So this is just visuals of how the cross points of mean, mode, and median are different. However, there could be situations when all three of them would be the same. So this is just showing you a normal distribution. Normal distribution is just a constant number, or a number that is crossing each other, or is a point that meets all the numbers, or all three different deviations as being crossing at a certain point. So what and how these are interpreted technically from the software computations that we do, we tend to look at what could be the best way to describe or to run the analytics on how best technique to apply. So if I see a median to be something that is hitting this part, or hitting the X and Y at this middle level, and I see the same is happening on the other side, I know that median could be a better option for me to do my computations. Um, it is pretty much the same on either side, except that depending on the values that I keep changing from X and Y. So if I change the name or the numbers of, for whatever those numerics are describing as y-axis or x-axis, I can change, or I can switch. I can make whatever is on the x to become to be taken to the y-axis, and y-axis numbers to be taken to the x-axis. Those changes would also give me a variance of how things change numerically. From the measures of variability, it is a distribution of what deviates, or what could be the collective effect of quantity of certain things. Or taking an example of these two charts, we have a size of a classroom, and within a semester, a certain number of students are getting enrolled. So when I compare the left one with the right one, you can see that there is a dispersion. In the right one, we've got groups that are spread for different, I guess, we've got 7 groups, and the number of students that are enrolled on is on the y-axis. And the groups are on the right hand side on the x-axis, and these are the number of enrollments, let's say. So based on this chart, I can see that the density of enrollment in semester 2 is high, whereas the groups have increased. On the left hand side, the group is number of groups. There are 6 groups here, And but the tutorial, what is on the x-axis? Let me check. Um, the group in 7 show more dispersion on variability in length than those in 1. Yes, so there is more dispersion. Range, standard deviation, variation data sets, range. Uh, variable. So this is number of groups. And this is probably the enrollment density. So enrollment in semester 1, number of groups, maybe number of students. So let's just call X as number of students. So there were 5 students enrolled in 6 groups for semester 1. There are 4 students enrolled in 3 groups, and same over here. So just the visual of it tells us that semester 2 probably has more number of students enrolled, but less number of groups. So there was like 4 groups, more students enrolled. Here we've got 6 groups, less number of students enrolled. So visually, it is going to give us a dispersion or a range. Range is anything that is from the 0 over here that moves to the right and on the x-axis, and from 0 to the y-axis up to 8 groups. So the range is 8 and 7. Deviation from here, from the first semester to the second semester, you could see the deviation is more compared to the first one, because this part, or where you have 3 groups, no students got enrolled. So the deviation or dispersion is also analyzed from looking at the chart. Standard deviation is when in a graph of X and Y, you've got a standard. Let's say you take standard to be a mean right here, this bar, and deviation could be negative on the left hand side because it is falling. And then the deviation from again the center is falling on the negative side. So this is the minus, and the one that is deviating from the standard mean on the right hand side and slowly tapering down and getting reduced against against y-axis is the other deviation, which is on the positive side. So deviation can be positive or it could be negative. Either way, deviation has a range, which is again the range of x on the bar, or on the y-axis from the point over here. I wish there was numbers describing it, but so the idea is just to get you an idea about it, and not necessarily to teach you the standard deviation method. So your range would be anything that is a number at the very top of y-axis and at the very end of x-axis. So this is the range, and deviation is from the median against the median or mode, whichever you take as a standard. Standard could be any of those, mean, mode, or median. Whatever it may be, deviation on the negative and on the positive side and on the negative side. Univariate, bivariate, multivariate analysis. When you have single number to compare with another, that is called univariate. Bivariate is standard method where you have 2 or more variables. Multivariate is when you have 3-dimensional, there is x, y axis, and there could be a third one, which could be a negative axis of y and a negative axis of x. So if you had a line like X and Y, but you had another line that is going from this 0 point to the left-hand side. As an extension of X, it will go to the negative. Similarly, Y, if it goes down the 0 with the same type of line, but it is extending in the lower portion, or is considered, for that reason, it is considered to be negative numbers or a negative Y. That would actually give you a 3D chart, and that they use in data visualization or in 3D modeling. So that's just, theory of how the quantitative analysis works. Then we have data collection method. There is surveys and polls. Surveys versus polls. A survey is more elaborate, more detailed. Polls is very short questions, usually not requiring a lot of understanding of the question. And these are simple questions, not very sensitive question or not very detailed questions. So this
Hi,
is,
hi. Can I just? Sorry, this is Neela. Can I ask a question? So, are these quantitative methods and statistics and all that part of the exam? Because getting into quantitative analysis and statistics is way more complicated, and unless you're an analyst already, like I wouldn't expect
I
this to be part of this certification. So, is this part of knowing all this on the exam as well?
The only thing that you have to be aware of is the visual understanding of the charts, just to know what this is, like just recognizing it by um, memorizing, how the chart is like. It's not going to be a computation of any sort that you will be asked to, use numbers to compute something. It's just going to be a chart like this, for instance, and they're going to say, what do you think this number or highlighted number is? You would say that this is the median. They would just ask you a question like, in this chart, for instance, that's why we just did the chart. They're going to say which is of higher density, or which of the two has greater number of students or more enrollment. Then you would just say, semester 2. I know those questions pretty well. So based on my knowledge and based on what the objective of the topic is, it's not for you to learn statistics, but for you to, know that there is a method, like, described through visuals of how the charts are displayed. So if it says variability or deviations, for instance, you know that these two charts are presenting somewhat a situation that has to do with, the variability. Variability is the variance. Variance is something that you match against. So
Yeah,
that's the
no,
concept.
I get that, but this is more complex. So unless myself, I'm an expert in that area, I don't expect to present to clients like the interpretation of data and statistical methods. So I'm just kind of wondering, how is that applicable to this? Like if you're doing research for clients, yet it's this clearly, like personally would fall outside of my area. I wouldn't be comfortable interpreting data like that. So
No,
just
it's
wondering.
not. It's not what your position is with your client in terms of their expectations of deliverables. The idea is for you to be prepared for situations where, there could be a requirement, or there could be something that you may have to explain from the chart, say. And unless there is some sort of an idea or some concepts behind um, your um, research methods that uses quantitative data, and it just, a situation just presents itself all of a sudden, then you would at least have a sense of, or an idea of what they're talking about. Not that you have to do quantitative analysis, but just for being, like I've done my college graduation, and some of the subjects I didn't think were useful, or I didn't never thought that I would, and I would, and I'm not even interested in those, but I ended up doing it because I had to get my degree. Uh, so few things that we introduce in the CIRS course is not customized for for everybody's requirements. It is more used in the general sense of giving you a concept, not something that you would come across or use it, but for you to know. So if you want to debate if we are ever going to use it as researchers, I'd say yes, we do. And if you are not using it, it doesn't mean that you know it's not something that's taught in research methods. uh, if your background library sciences by any chance, Mila?
No,
Or
I studied economics, so and I've done some more graduate type work. So that's fine. I mean, if it's just for general purposes.
it's just for it, it's not like one of those things which you would have to use or necessarily use it. But something that and the reason I'm explaining what you have to know for the exams is actually answering your exact question, for if it is going to be part of the exam. So to ease up that thought of yours for being worried about the questions that's going to come in the exam, I just want to put your mind at ease with just letting you know what you would be able to, or you would be tested on with the question. So it's a lot of practice questions that we have prepared. When we send it out, I think it's going to be this week, by the end of this week, you will see that most of the practice questions are not as whatever we covered is a lot more, okay, than what you're tested on. So you're well prepared. However, in this area, you would find that there is only maybe one or two questions um, that has to do with quantitative analysis or qualitative analysis, both together, because it's a lengthy course. It's a lot of topics to cover. So they don't. There could be a chance that they won't even ask any question on the topic. So even if you practice with those questions, you would know what is going to come in the exam pretty much based on what the examiner has been putting in for the CIRS exams. I'm familiar with it because I get to see the answers of what students have attempted. So I have a very good idea of what will come in the exam, and when I set up your practice, I will only put those questions which I know that would show up, or be somewhat similar to in the final exams. So you're not going to calculate standard deviation. You're not going to calculate anything to do with dispersion. It's just the knowledge of, if you read it even once in the book, that's sufficient enough. Even in the book, you would see that these are all descriptive theories. They are not actual quantitative analysis in the sense of using the numbers. So knowing what univariate, bivariate, or multivariate is, you could just read some of this, or look up all the Q&As for practice, and from that you can get an idea of what generally comes from these topics. So that's the only part. Rest of it that we have covered, apart from what we're just discussing on the quantitative side, I don't think you'll have a problem understanding. But if you still have problem with what we finished up, just read it once and then let me know what you think. Because just by my explaining it, probably it became more complicated. But if you read it, just reading maybe this 3 pages there, it will you'll feel more comfortable. It's not as difficult. Okay,
Okay,
so let's
thank you.
just move further with the survey questions. Okay, so the other thing in the exam could be um, just memorizing or at least learning about the terminologies. Like there are two types of questions in the surveys. One we call close-ended, and then there is open-ended questions. So what is the difference between the two? They might just give you some questions and ask you if to cross match it with either it being a close-ended question or open-ended. So if you know what the difference is, you can just make the right selection. So open-ended, we are not going to discuss much because these questions don't have any sort of format. They are pretty much like freehand answers, more detailed for anyone to write on their own without using multiple choices. So those are open-ended questions for which there is no definitive answer, or it could be an answer that could vary from one person to another, depending on how they write it and what they think about or their opinions. So that is open-ended. Close-ended has a format. So you have to remember what are dichotomous, Likert scale, semantic differential, rating, ranking, multiple choice, and fill in the blanks. These are different terminologies. To understand them, you would just have to look at how these are set, and it's no rocket science here. Dichotomous question is simple yes or no, one or two, agree, disagree. Dichotomous, two, die. Multiple choice questions could be. Now here we are talking about close-ended. Close means that there are these choices from which you have to select one. Okay, and then there is multiple choice questions, not difficult. You can see what multiple choice is like. So these are just formats. Rating questions. Sometimes we have to set up survey questions in a certain format depending on the type of data it's going to produce, and especially qualitative, which has a kind of a way of not easy to convert into numbers. You can write it with the rating, write it as a rating question. How often do you purchase lunch in the company's cafeteria? It could be very frequently, occasionally, things like that. That is rating questions. Okay. Then you've got Likert scale. Likert scale, um, develop workable federal budget. Okay, so here you have got a question. If you notice, there is it could have been dichotomous question if we did not put number two here. But when you do put something like somewhat disagree, in essence, in a way, you are opening up the opportunity for someone to to act in a neutral way. All right. When they somewhat, then this, if they just say agree or disagree, it may not be as accurate, because the sentiments behind or what their thought might be just restrict them from selecting number two. Instead, they'll be forced to uh, either agree or disagree. So you create another one we call a Likert scale, which is a question that makes you or gives a neutral situation for someone who don't agree or disagree, but are double-minded. Overall, do you think trade globalization is good for? Here is another format. So there's formats after formats. Important thing is that you understand that there are different ways of writing, or there is a layout to these questions on how they are posed. So Likert scale is another format that you are looking at. where there could be multiple questions, and against the questions, there could be choices on top, disagree, somewhat agree, or agree, uh, semantic differential, scale of 1 to 10, opinions, reviews, etc. Whereas 1 to 7, 1 is bad, 7 is good. So that is semantic differential. Ranking questions, there are situations where, you do need to create a certain format of questions that is understood, and that is considered to be some way of describing in the research world, um, you know, uh, the basis of your question, the type of your question, and there is theories behind each format of the questions of why you would choose ranking questions instead of semantic differential, instead of Likert. So there could be these, and if you understand, or have you chosen any of these formats that are acceptable formats, it would make it easier for communication, and even within the research group, you could actually be able to discuss it. That's because what you're writing is understood by everybody else in the same sense. Checklist type of questions, which would you like to see? So these are multiple choice. These are just formats. I'm supposed to just show you the formats, and for you to know that it is acceptable formats, and something which everybody in the as traditional researchers, they understand this language of terminologies. Uh, you know, so that's pretty much on this side. Open-ended questions, as I explained to you, it's freehand, anything, opinion, something that you can write about as open expression of what you think. So advantages, disadvantages, don't want to have to discuss it. What are interviews? What are online interviews? So anything that is actually embedded in the traditional research world is now transitioned into the digital side of the internet, as virtual platforms are pretty frequently used. So interviews, when we talk about traditional interviews, it is just giving you kind of a short form of what interviews are about. But more importantly, we are interested in online interviews, which is exactly having the same sort of formats or same idea of why interviews are done. And the only disadvantage is somewhat in interview situation. You know, there is a method to everything that we do when we are collecting data. Even if it's interviews, we have to make a preparation. We have to have a moderator. We more want to make sure that there is some synergy or dissimilarities depending on what we want to derive from the interview. The sample or the people that we select, they have to have uh, some sort of a commonality, or they could be a discussion which would ensure that you are able to pick things from the expressions, the cues, the type of sentiments, or some of the sensitivities that are otherwise not easy to capture when you're discussing certain topics with your group, or doing your regular surveys. Then perhaps gaining a bit of a confidence by being more personal, and interpersonal setup is more congenial, and allows people to interact in different ways and answer things, or even certain questions they pose has an answer to a question. So it is a process which would require not only the preparations, but you have to be trained as an interviewer or a professional interviewer if that is what you need to do for gathering the information. And if it is a virtual platform, then um, then well, there are uh, so when would you prefer interviews online rather than, physically having people just join in a conference situation? Obviously, one of the things is it's hard to get all the people at one place, and then you've got budget situations, you've got, um, anonymity sometimes is requested, so that could be another thing you have to be mindful of. Surveys according to the span of time involved. So there are two types of surveys we call. One of them is cross-sectional survey. Cross-sectional is in a single period of time, which means that it is the type of survey that would get you the answers right away, or let's say even in a few days' time is about enough of a short period to call it a cross-sectional survey. But longitudinal surveys are over time, which means it is a survey that wouldn't end in one go because event is involving evolving, situation is changing. So it is a kind of survey which is segmented or is it is going to evolve or change with the progression of event or situation that changes. So if you are getting better response in a certain social setup, and you feel that the more issues are coming up and there were more questions than answers, then perhaps you want to add those to your surveys in the next round or in the next phase. And so it continues, and that is a longitudinal survey. um, we have done sampling already, so that's covered. Uh, so all sorts of surveys, web surveys, paper surveys, and so on. Important topic, something that you may be asked in the exam. And this is the reason I'm scrolling through this. So I just want to at least touch upon those topics which I think would be part of the exam, or at least it'll be a short question. Virtual focus group, what is the difference? Virtual focus group is usually all in interview situation. There could be a mix of background of people with issues being discussed at different levels. But in a focus virtual group or a focus group, we have one scenario, one situation, one interest, and a focus on a certain topic, which is supposed to bring some sort of, which has to be brought to some sort of a conclusion. In interviews, conclusion is not necessary. Online virtual ethnography means something that you're going to study deep in by embedding into a social situation of being part of, let's say, a research that requires for you to spend more time understanding in social studies, for instance, to be living the life in a certain tribe somewhere, to or if it is a war situation, to embed yourself in a with the military, to observe the situation and see how it evolves. But more so in the social culture or kind of um, an environment that requires for you to get a deeper understanding of their customs and their living style and so on. That is considered, that is called an ethnography. And so it is slightly different from other kind of surveys that you do and other kinds of forms of information collection. Clinical trials, we don't have to worry about. Clinical trial is any research study that prospectively assigns human participant. Now, in online clinical trials, we are looking at somewhat a different scenario, because medical information is quite personal and more privileged information. and therefore, to qualify someone or to recruit someone in clinical trials, you need to cover a lot of ground from the legal perspective. Like you need to obtain something called um, what is that called? Informed consent. That is the word. Informed consent is a piece of paper that is more like properly laid out a contract of some sort, not as elaborate as some of the other contracts, but maybe a few pages that is going to contain a consent, a written explicit consent from those participating in clinical trials. So if it is a human subject involved anywhere, especially if it is medical related in clinical trials, when you recruit people for these kind of surveys or research, you certainly need to involve there has to be a legal um, attorneys, say, that would work in between the parties to get that paperwork done. Web-based experiments. This is kind of web-based experiments, in my knowledge and according to how we look at it, is observing something that is visually captured as clips of um, social experiments, something to do with ethnicity, something to do with compassion, empathy, attitudes, responses to certain or opinions of some sort. Mostly these subjects are more sensitive and more biased for the reason of you know the the kind of lobbies that exist. Could be religion based, it could be ethnicity based, and so on. So those are web based experiments or social experiments. I'm going to start business research in business and business of research in about 10 to 15 minutes. Any questions so far? Please let me know if anything, and especially the um, the part where we did our statistical analytics and all that. I'm going to open up or show you perhaps some of the examples of questions that come uh, in this topic of quantitative analysis. So until I open that up, or maybe I'll do it after the break. So we'll just take 15. And after that, I'll open up those sample questions for Mila to look at. All right, Mila, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So we'll look at that questions, all right,
Thank
when
you.
we come back. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we can continue now if everybody is there. I'm going to show you the sample questions that you can expect in the exams on the quantitative analysis side. Mila, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
So I've opened up, sample questions that you would be attempting. Something that's pretty much common in the exams I've seen lately. So these are, the type of questions which frequently are displayed in your exams. I've looked at the recent ones, and the questions on the topic of quantitative analysis. One of them is, as you could see right here, it says, a graph below represents a method of quantitative analysis. What does the percentage 95 identify? And then look at the selection of answers or multiple choice. You've got three choices. mean and median, standard deviation, univariate, bivariate, and multivariate analysis. This is standard deviation you can see just by looking at it. So it is more the visual of how those charts and graphs and all those in pictures that you looked at, how that is connected to something which would look familiar when you look at the choice of answers. And you could see standard deviation is what is discussed with this chart. Okay. Then there is another question. So they were just, and these are practice questions. So they mostly these are the two favorite ones that come in. So I have the other one that says review the mathematical calculation of quantitative data analysis shown in diagram below. The value of 5 appears to identify with the method used in QDA computes for quantitative data analysis. What is this? The name given, what is the name given to this method of computation? So this is mean or average, right? And you can always connect it with, or you can remember, from looking at this picture, it's exactly the same as in the book. And this is how we calculated the mean. So it is not a median, it's not a mode. By the way, on quantitative analytics, statistical methods are most important when you're doing your sampling or when you are um, extracting samples from a large population, and you have to give it some sort of a rationale if it is a quantitative number of any kind, uh, that you are planning uh, to relate to or connect with, let's say, an employee number, or it could be number of employees, you know, uh, it could be locations that you have selected. So what method you used in sampling. Some of the sampling methods that we discussed earlier when you weren't here, the previous class, there was a mention of selecting every sixth employee, for instance. So that is part of the statistical method. That means that we must have used a rationale of a median that we took. A median can be, a number or every sixth number or 10th number. So it's just interconnected in such a way that having a bit of a knowledge about it uh, is, uh, is going to be important, because when you are doing a non-biased sampling and you have to rationalize your selection method, and you have to adopt a method that could be a statistical method, that's when you would connect with what we learned. So no big deal. These are simple questions. I don't think should be a problem. Were these easy?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yes.
Now I'm going to start module 2, which module 3 rather, research and business of research. So to begin with, I'm going to introduce you to 3 charts, one of which is displaying in front of you. And we're going to start with looking at what the potential client or your employer is expecting when, especially in this case, we're talking about an independent research specialist looking to get an opportunity with a potential client, and where the client would be interested in certain type of certain type of qualifications in you to hire you. So this is what we're going to discuss. One is, obviously you have to really position your business in such a way that you can package your services based on either your specialization of any sort, which is backed with your industry experience or your educational background and so on. So if it is some area of expertise that you have adopted or for which you feel comfortable, you want to get into for research reasons, could be academic research, could be legal research, or whatever it may be, that is an area of specialization. or you could be a generalist, which means that you know how to do research, you have that critical bent of mind, you have all the soft skills and the hard skills to actually look for anything under the sun, especially if it is online research, then you are a generalist. That positioning you have to do and package your services. So that's what client is going to look at. So where you're coming from. Second is uh, that, oh, sorry, I'm sorry. This is not the exact chart I showed. Gosh, what am I doing? Um, Okay, so let's look at this one as if you are preparing to get into your own research business. So first segment, you have to position your business and package your services. Second is that you have to actually be able to have a selection of, listed links of or locations of where to find certain type of info. It's not like when you get the research work, then you're scrambling around looking for those resources. So if you have a library of some sort that is more organized and takes you to exactly those locations to find that info. For instance, if I am to look, if I'm in doing business intelligence research or something to do with something to do with comparative intelligence, I would certainly like to look at the company records or the competitions, background information about products, services, and so on. So, to for me to dig deeper into, either I can pay for those type of info to be collected from sources like LexisNexis, or alternatively, I can go to a place called Open Corporates, which give me a similar kind of info, but without any cost. So, to keep those databases handy is important. um, Relevance and reliability. So I should have a methodology or some sort of agreed method of verifying information. If it is first and a primary resource, it is much easier. But if it is secondary resource, then to ensure that you are able uh, to conduct some sort of a check or see their cross references to be able to satisfy the client that the information is vetted and it is verified. Another skill that you may want to look for is how to, and especially these days for online information that's floating around from social media site, no matter what type of info it is, it could be fake, it could be intentionally misrepresented, or it could be deep fakes of some sort that simulates voice and video, and would be difficult to otherwise figure out if the authenticity is to be evaluated, either by forensic means or by means of using certain type of tools. How to collect, tabulate. So collection of information is not everything. It's your ability to organize it. You can use different softwares to do that, analytic softwares. You can apply. You should be able to perform all sorts of analysis, be able to do relationships. If you've got unstructured data, then how to put it together, how to create some sort of a parent-child relationship or a relationship that generally is going to give a structure to a database. How to write research reports, that's another talent. Your communication skills, your ability to understand how the reporting should be formally presented, what are the different contributors that make that report, the sources, including verification methods. It is all itemized. This is more like a checklist of when you do your research reports. And of course, depending on the objective of research and the scope given to you, you would be able to figure out, what style to adopt. for reporting reasons. One of the researches that you do for generally for the clients is just to be able to provide about enough information for the client to make a decision or for client to come up with a conclusion, and you don't need to derive any inferences or give your own opinion. Only when you are involved as a third eye or outside consultant for and you are recognized for your opinion as coming from a professional who understand the industry and the business, would you be required to provide some sort of conclusion. Ability to conduct online investigative work, there is a different approach to it. If anything that needs to be validated for data, for finding something as a background information or tracking assets, that is what we call assets discovery. There are techniques and methods which are similar to what OSINT tools, which is open source intelligence tools, as well as online investigative techniques. That is a kind of a more profound in going a step beyond just learning how to do or how to collect information using your search queries. It is more to do with validation, verification, and checking. Then you've got familiarization of important, say, cyber laws. Unless you're able to protect yourself from any kind of liability that inherently is connected to your better understanding of intellectual property laws, some of the contracts, disclaimers, your obligation and duties, your protection of data for your clients, or your liability in the case of data leaks and so on. So there are so many aspects that one has to be not only aware of, but would have to make provisions to protect yourself legally and be ready to hand out contracts and legal documents that ideally, like in our case, we have, a bunch of documents for that we use for different reasons. We don't involve attorneys at all stages of our contractual relationships or for procuring contracts. So they have to be ready documents. Sound knowledge of conventional research methods, which is what we learned in CIRS, knowledge of specialized online research and research tools. These are specialized tools. These are the kind of information which is considered more like a reference for your, for you to to be able to use at a time when it is needed. I'll give you an example of what we provide as a reference guide or something that contains a more detailed and organized listing of specialized search engines and specialized search tools. So if you had looked up in your Dropbox, there is a folder which contains these reference guides, and we do advertise it when we are advertising for the classes as part of your course material. Let me see which one has that. Resource reference booklets. Okay, so I think this is the one. So for example, specialized search engines, and see, there is a password to it, so don't forget to insert the password. Let me check this one first. I'm going to copy this and open up specialized search engines. I don't know if it's going to open on in the browser or not. Sometimes, okay, it did open up. So if you look at this reference guide, and by the way, this gets updated frequently. The one that is to come out hasn't actually been uploaded yet because we're still doing some finishing touches. The 2022 will come later part of this year. We don't issue it like early during the year because we're still collecting info for the current year. So if you look at what is contained in this and go slightly into where it says academic, science, arts, books, journals, and other research references, you can see these links. So if it has anything to do with the topic of physics, you can click on this. It will take you to a certain type of search engine or a search portal or a website that has the searchability for these kind of research papers. So this is, let's say, organized under the heading of academic science. So this is more academic. All this is listed, and these are all clickable links. And a little bit of a brief of what it is about. Most importantly, we have rated these sites according to their, nature, according to the usefulness. We have a criteria. We have 5 different criteria to come up with these numbers that you see in the last column. These numbers are giving a rating where 5 or the 5, yeah, 5 is the maximum. 3 and 2 is on the average side. So 5 being the top rate, meaning that it has got a latest, the resource is upgraded more frequently. It has and the quality of what is the second was the quality of the information, um, the accessibility of the information, to what extent you can access it, if it is totally free or not. So everything matters, and that's how we come up with the numbers. So you can very easily look up anything that has got a highest rating and then click on these links. And if I take you to the table of contents, the very beginning, you could see that these are organized the according to what they are going to give you the links for. So if you're looking for search engines that only search into the blogs, you can click on this and there'll be a list of search engines that specifically will query the blogs. Business directories, document search engines, there's a separate kind. I don't know if you knew this, but there are specialized search engines just to find documents, research papers on the internet. You could even do it with your search queries, but this one has a way of just drilling down into the documents, forums, online communities, groups. So if you click on any one of these, you can get a list. Okay. Similarly, you have a list of online verification tools, most useful for you, Steve. If you want to try it out, you could see that it has a lot of the tools, which some of them I never knew existed, but because we have volunteers that are continuously providing us with this information and updating our databases. So the likelihood is that if anything we missed out, it may have been picked up by somebody else and must be contributed in this booklet as well.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So that's it. Let's see. So if you want to see forensic investigative tools for IT security expert, these are find locations, okay? People monitoring tool, and there could be several tools under these headings. And I think it is very well organized, especially given the fact that it has such a granular format of how they're mentioning in detail or giving headings to individual type of tools. So if it is Facebook OSINT tools, you can click on it. Website background reading, all of these are there. That's about talking about knowledge of a specialized online search and research tools. So practically what this slide is telling you is the level of preparedness that is needed for you to start your own research business. And last but not the least, how to perform precision search with query operators, notations, and symbols. Next slide is what I started talking about without looking at it. So this is where the client is going to make a decision on whether or not to give you the task or give you the job to do the research, right?
Naveed, before we get off the topic of research resources, unfortunately, I haven't gone through all of the resource material that you provided for this course. It's quite extensive. There's one source I'm not sure that everybody is familiar with. You probably are. It's the most accessed U.S. government website. It's called the CIA World Factbook.
Yes.
It's invaluable resource. I didn't know whether you had listed that one or not.
No, I have. It's there. It's there in the in the one that we just opened up, tools and utilities for verification. It is in there.
Got it. Thank
So
you.
this, yeah, sure. I'm sure you'll find it. It's just anything that is as prominent and as well known as CIA fact books. It should be there. By the way, I don't rely much on that when it comes to getting real information.
No, it's more generalized.
Yeah, it's not as specific, really. Okay, so now this one, Steve, we're going to talk about the how the client is going to view your capabilities, or make a decision on whether or not to give you the research work. It's going to look for experience and industry knowledge, subject knowledge, previous work experiences, standard stuff, previous work experience, references. So I'd suggest, if you're starting something on your own and you're very new, you're probably a generalist, perhaps just picking up some work that is available through virtual outsourcing platforms, like Upwork is one of them. They don't pay well because you are competing with offshore human resources, and for that reason the price points are very low, but for references it could be a good start. Then we've got, can we trust giving business information? This is really most important. The trust factor in extending research work. First of all, research is very unique in the sense of how someone perceives it as having the need for research on some subject versus how the researcher would look at that from the client's perspective, or make the best guess of what client actually needs. A lot of times it's so personal, and the information requirement is so much evolving, or changing, deviating, and it takes a totally different course in its approach. So it becomes more personalized, or it becomes more of an individual's own view of how they look at information or pick up on that information. So that's why there is a gap between what is considered searchable or satisfactorily searchable by the client, especially on small size assignments that are, you know, just bringing pieces of information. But when it comes to a type of research which is, which is more elaborate and requires a kind of a human resource that has to do a lot of legwork to collect that info, and where collection of information by the business itself is difficult because nobody would give it to them, being a competitor in some industry. So they do, or they can use already ready-made researches done by big research companies like Forrester, IDC, etc. Those are very expensive proposition. So what they do is that they would give that research out on the assumption that you would understand a type of research that is named and is considered to be overall considered to have all those elements that typically are part of that or integral part of that research. Like market research, everybody knows what it contains. You make a research plan. You do comparative intelligence. You do your product feature set analysis and so on. So there could be market research, consumer acceptability of some sort of product when they're doing pre-launch or they're planning to bring a brand new product into the market. So there's market research. Then there is industry research. If somebody wants to set up an industry somewhere, or there could be a requirement from investors or bankers, like they want feasibility studies or feasibility reports or research in that area. So that has a name to it. It has a typical format. Everybody knows what is required um, of the researcher to collect for building up that research report. So those are standardized and pretty much well known, and for that reason, they can be outsourced and um, not as personalized. So the trust factor, we were talking about the trust factor. When it comes to trusting, it means it's a two-way street where the client have a trust issue in two respect. One is that when they're doing research or some specific research, which is more on the customized side for their particular needs, they would have to share some information or some data from their own side or from their own numbers or whatever is generated internally that needs to be shared. So that is one aspect. Second is that from the researcher side, they want an assurance that once that research is done, the researcher is not going to share that with their competitors or use it to or recycle that somewhere else in their research reports. That could become more like a commercial um, uh, commercially distributable reports for which they want to make sure that that's not what you're going to do. And then there is a trust in terms of capability, like whether you'll be able to deliver within time or not, whether your organization is big enough or if it is not just one man show and you have certain number of partners, or it has a continuity that can be assured through its legal structure. So if it is, a corporation or, um, a firm where you have multiple partners, that if something happens to you for the client, they would be able to continue dealing with your company because there are others that can that can carry on with it. So there is a trust factor. Can we count on information and data reliability? A lot of companies today, especially the ones that are doing surveys, collecting poll, and so on, they're not as reliable because it is a kind of a, uh, uh, you can build as many of the checks for ensuring that the surveys are genuine and the information is first-hand information. But it is very hard to actually get the kind of or the level of assurance. So the reputation is very important. So information and data that you're collecting, if not just surveys, maybe from other resources, like even from documents or from other research um, uh, or other data resources that you're getting it from, it needs to be validated. So there has to be an assurance there. So one has to have methods and methodologies in place so that there is a check and balance which can give assurance for the client to know that you're following those procedures and you're self-regulating it by following those procedures. And your association or anything that connects you with membership of reputable, regulators, um, as um, as someone that you are answerable to or you subscribe to is going to be another set of assurance that sort of works, goes a long way for the client to get to know that you're following those industry standards. Uh, then there is a business size, which I mentioned to you, if it's a corporation or a firm. What are the business members, membership with trade and professional bodies I just explained? Who are the business partners, collaborators, affiliates, franchise? A lot of times, a small research company or a startup researcher would have to really work in association with other researchers or other small research businesses, only because the nature of this profession is, and what from what we saw, is that it sometimes the research is seasonal. Some of your clients would ask you all of a sudden to, scale your human resource and other overheads for you to, to cope with the rush and the volume that suddenly surges. And for that reason, you would need a collaboration and would certainly require to work with affiliates or work with other researchers that are associated with you, so that your human resource situation can be covered. You cannot have so many number of people to work for you in your research business on permanent basis. When there is a idle time, those resources would be a drain to your cash flow. So that is another way of you being associated with or affiliated with. Here, affiliation and association could also mean you are partnering with some of the big names or big brands in different things that you do in your research work, like the software companies, well-known software uh, companies that have trained you on their applications. You can name some of those where your affiliations and your training is highlighted. It can be a Google partner in different sort of or you can be a contributor in writing papers to some journals and so on. What is the business digital footprint like? So are you, a lot of times your client want to see if you've got a social media accounts that is, looking busy, or people's reviews or third parties interaction can be evaluated for, your business capabilities, for opinions, and so on. How do the business website appear and look? Your presentation of your corporate material is important. Are there any third party opinions, polls, reputation rating? So when your digital footprint is looking good and seems that there is a lot of action there, eventually what Google does these days, that it has those snippets that gives shows stars or ratings, which is collected from different platforms, including social media resources, to give it some sort of a rating. And that could be vouched, or that can be looked at to see what others are talking about uh, um, for you as a business or for you as a researcher. Are there any court cases? So they might just look at the litigation aspect to see through searches or through looking into databases of courts, hearings, and court cases to see if there is any pending liability or suits against you. So all these are the ones that is going to minimize the risk for the client, to see if you could be the best fit to do the job for them. So that's this slide. Third one is not as important. I think, how do I get online research work? So anybody's looking for online research work these days, you think? Um, Mila, Steve, Coral, Gil,
I would say
any one
yes.
of you? Okay. I'd say yes for everyone, or it's just, huh?
I would use it more in
Is
my
it
job.
okay? That's
Yeah,
Gil,
so
eh?
yes, sir. I'm working in a technical library, and we have access to a whole bunch of databases and stuff, scientific ones, whatever. But then sometimes they ask me to, do searches or find the paper or something, so I could use some of these tools. But yeah, it's not like I'm currently doing it, but I'm learning it.
So you're pretty much confined to an environment where you're accessing a standard database, relational database, is it? It's not like textual where you could actually write queries. I'm talking besides and or not just the Boolean part, but something textual that we learned from the Google search queries. Is it
Right.
somewhat?
Yeah, I think I could end up doing both, but for right now, it's more like I'm just learning. So it's within the context of the database. It's not as, with all, I don't even know how to break it down, the stuff that you explained, but it's something that I eventually could use all those tools that you're teaching us.
I see. Okay. So, and Mila, do you do research for someone you're working somewhere, or do you plan to start your own business?
Oh, no, I currently don't. Yeah, it's just personal interest, potentially another source of income. But yeah, I know it takes a lot of work to to establish yourself. So I have seen those advertisements in those websites. I think Workup or something you mentioned. I've seen those for short-term research. So that's probably a good start.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a good knowledge to have, and in this course, it's like mostly anyone who's doing CIRS, they are looking to start their own business or do something on the side. So for that reason, I think it could be very useful. Anyway, how do I get an online research business? We have a lot to say about it in the topics that's going to follow, because after all, we are going to look at opportunities, um, some of the research opportunities that exist in the general market, and then there are others which actually are generated from the business environment. And for those who are looking to tap into organizations that may require outside help for gathering data or information sets, they probably would be interested, but only um, to the extent where it feeds their own requirements of gathering something that is available outside of their business environment. So understanding of what type of research reports they require for management, for shareholders, for bankers, investors, and so on, you could see that in certain type of reports which could be internal, but maybe a combination of internal use as well as external usefulness. But in both cases, there could be parts of the information that is collected internally from the organization, and then um, there could be other information that is collected from outside, and these are put together in different types of reports for various reasons, to do price analysis, to do product analysis, to do bill of material analysis. Um, so what they would certainly require, because they cannot be numbers cannot be fighting against each other from the same organization. So for anything to remain competitive, they have to look at what's going on outside. And that outside information is for the independent researchers to look for as opportunity that you can deliver. And for that reason, we're going to discuss some of the market research reports as well, and other reports, which is management reports, but would need external data. So we'll connect with that. So I'm not going to do this slide because we'll talk about all these in detail. But let's suppose that you read through it and see if you have any question to ask.
Not so far.
Yeah, this is pretty standard ABC for now. And if we go a little further, this is again some definitions. What is independent consultant, independent research specialist as consultant? So, we're not going to look at the definitions. By the way, again, it's whatever I ignore or flip through or, sort of not explain, it is one of those things that you can read, but may also not be as important for the exams, may not even appear in your uh, in your uh, in your final exam. So intentionally, I would not just ignore them. I would do it only knowing all these facts. Soft skills and hard skills. Okay. So some of the slides are just an overkill, literally. I mean, I wouldn't worry about them. List of research reports used in businesses. Remember, with the topic that we are covering, it says research in business and business of research. So right now we are doing research in business, and then we'll do business of research. Right, with the list that you're looking at, there is different types of research reports, and just understanding or just remembering the names of these or how they are mentioned as headings would help you to do your search by putting search them in Google, and you will find what is involved or what type of information is contained in these type of reports. So just for your knowledge, this is just letting you know that there are different types of research reports, and this is how these they are named. Okay, and most of these are the famous ones or typically used by researchers. And those researchers, when I choose the word researchers moving forward, it is going to be internal researchers as well as external researchers. Internal researchers are the ones that are working in an organization. Externals are, anyone who's independent research specialist. So internal researchers understand all of these different reports because they become part of their business, and at different operational activities, each of these reports are tied up to what the departments are supposed to generate on regular basis. Some of these reports are of interest to the management, others are of interest to the shareholders, investors, and the like. Now, which of the job titles are responsible for ensuring that those research reports are to be put together and be presented or be available to them? These are the key positions: senior business executives, product managers and product designers, finance and accounts related, marketing. So all of these are the jobs that or the job titles that actually use the information which we are about to look at with the different research reports. Analyst jobs. Now, analyst is someone who is collecting data and doing the analysis that makes it into research reports. However, as an analyst, or where people have full-time analysts in-house, they could be business analyst, cost analyst, financial analyst, any of these analysts. If those people are there, then pretty much mostly the job is taken care of, and the position itself as an analyst means that they will be collecting the information from all resources outside or inside of the organization. Okay. Sort, you don't want to. This is most important. Now, in the business management world, there is internal data and external data. External data is mostly what the researcher might be involved in collecting that. internal data is what is generated by the management. Now this box has headings, and then it has a list of reports that are mentioned here right next to the asterisk sign. The department we call marketing and sales, they have the type of reports which is typically circulating in the same department of marketing and sales, like campaign effectiveness research, comparative analysis research, brand research, SWOT analysis, consumer insight, and so it continues. There's a whole list of it. The idea of putting them in these boxes is to organize it so that you know that these are different named reports, and whatever data is inside of it or whatever research is gathered under these names, it is got two portions or two segments of data. One is what is collected internally, and then there is a portion which is externally collected. So since we are not going to open up each of these reports to see what is involved, I'll give you just a general idea of what could be internal and what could be externally collected. So if it is comparative analysis, the study or the research part, which will have numbers from inside of the organization, would have the price, product, and their own data of what products they are trying to compete with against the competitors. So whatever is collected from outside as details of bill of material, the product features, and everything else may require extra hand, and therefore an external data would be collected by the researcher. There could be, say, consumer insights. A lot of data can be collected from external researchers, and they would be tapping into the data sets that are accessed through social media accounts, whereas the marketing department would collect the insight or the consumer response through its own internal CRM systems, or anything that brings consumer reviews, or something that is delivered or collected through their own websites. So there could be a combination of data that can partly be collected or generated internally and partly externally by external researchers. So it is most important that a researcher understands the opportunity and knows which department would have a requirement or would need an external help, and for what type of data. So that is the bridge that you have to build between yourself and organizations, specifically being in touch with those head of the departments or those that are decision makers. Similarly, in company research reports is another segment. Here, equity valuation report is required. Equity valuation would probably use either the auditors, external auditors, or use external specialists that can do the valuation of assets, for instance. In the case they want to do company assets valuation. Share valuation is another area. These are done by third parties always, because management can work in collusion with each other to distort numbers or to not be able to give a non-biased valuation. So for that reason, external help is required, and external researcher would be helpful. So depending on in any of these report types, you may want to, as I said, you can Google them and see what type of data or information you have expertise in collecting, and you can offer it as a service to the businesses. So this is the part where the external researcher would have an opportunity to work with organizations. Business of research we've got popular research areas, and then we've got popular research areas in KPO. Popular research areas in business, which is typically the type of reporting that fall under these comparative intelligence, company research, and so on, as they are listed. These are more lucrative, perhaps pay, better, and a ready opportunity. But then, if you specialize in any of these type of data collection methods, and have a background to back it up from the industry perspective, or your professional qualifications, you may want to offer your services. So if you're coming from marketing research or market research side as a specialist in that area, you may want to offer services in the business competitive intelligence for the businesses. If you're coming from accounting and finance area, or you're a financial analyst, maybe, this is where you can do your research, accounting and financial. And within these headings, or the top layered headings, there could be smaller reports, smaller sets of information that makes different types of sub reports or ancillary reports to the main heading. So business comparative intelligence in terms of product pricing versus product feature sets versus bill of material, procurement, cost of material, and so on. So you can do all those within the heading of business comparative intelligence. On the other side, we are dealing with KPO. KPO means knowledge process outsourcing, and this is more on the specialized side, and gives a lot of room to offer services as a generalist. One of the popular ones, or the type of outsourced services which are very common to look to see on platforms like Upwork or Fiverr and so on, that hire outside researchers. They are looking for sales lead collections, data scraping, recruitment data search. By the way, recruitment data search is most lucrative, and so is market research data. Surveys, polls, focus group, and so on, these require a little bit of a specialization and a kind of a trust factor, as well as having some reputation to back you up, where you can offer doing surveys, or where you have enough human resource in-house that you can offer these services, because it is labor intensive. You've got social media research, you can be specializing in this area because you know where to get that information, how much it costs, what are some of the tools that you can use to collect it, and so on and so forth. So that is what we call knowledge process outsourcing. So these are the two segments, or two differentiators, of how the opportunities would be in, depending on your positioning of yourself as a research specialist. But you can do both or either, just depends. But nevertheless, both are opportunities. So I think this is about enough for today. Next, I'm going to talk about project research, project pricing. What are different methods? How would you calculate cost versus pricing? What are the different pricing methods that are acceptable in research business? Different types of contracts as a researcher that you may want to consider, the advantages, disadvantages of those, and what is the way in which you're going to do your billing, invoicing. There is a format to it, so we're going to look at the visuals of how the invoicing is done, which is slightly different. If you look at the invoices that are generated from law office versus from accountant's office versus, so there are different formats, and so is there a format or suggested format for research business. And those documents not only include the invoicing and billing, but would also be inclusive of how you're going to view the research proposal, or how you're going to respond to request for a proposal by writing a proposal yourself to deliver to the client. What are going to be the details or itemized content of those responses. So we have those documents listed as specimens in our module 3. It's towards the end of those main topics as annexures. We have already done that. If you recall, Steve, it was just you and me, remember that day when we were doing it?
Yes.
Was it, I think, a class before the last one? The last one we did sampling. The one before, was it? So we
Yeah, the
pretty
one,
much
yeah.
covered it. And that segment, we have it captured in the recording. So may not have to go and do that part. So in the next class, we should be done with business of research. And then for whatever is left, as I mentioned with Steve, because nobody else was around. So you can look at the recording to make sure that, we you can connect it with whatever we finish or end up finishing in the next class. So because that is an integral part of it. And the last thing which we'll do next week, perhaps, and there is a class on Saturday, so and between Saturday, yeah. So by Saturday, we'll finish up business of research. And the following week, we'll do the last of the modules, which is module 4 of internet law and ethics. So with that in mind, I'm going to make my best effort because it's coming towards finishing up everything. So I'm going to get you the practice Q&As, okay? So you can keep your eye on the ball and what and if you have any questions in between, we can answer it as well during the class sessions. So perhaps before the next class, I should give you the Q&As. I'll just drop him in your Dropbox and shoot you all an email, okay? So thank you very much. Let's call it an evening or wherever you are, your afternoons. See you next time. When is my next class? Did you look up the schedule? I
On
think
Thursday.
it's open. So on Thursday, that means day after. Okay. So good enough. I'll see you all on Thursday and then on Saturday. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.